Hey, this is Jon Leon Guerrero. Our guest today is Chad Wright. He's a world-class drummer who's worked with the Jacksons, Michael Bolton, and Chaka Khan, to name just a few. In these crazy quarantine times, he's playing in the Bandemic Project with his wife Noriko Alling on keys, Gussie Miller and Laura Dickinson on vocals, Jay Gore on guitar, and Leland Sklar on bass. Right now they're raising money for the Yes on 21 initiative to preserve affordable housing and bring some stability to seniors, families, and working Californians. You can watch their videos on Leland Sklar's YouTube channel. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button. It's Leland Sklar, for crying out loud. Anyway, Chad is a great guy, a fantastic drummer, and I met him through Corey Jacobs, which is as good an endorsement as you can get in my book. Speaking of endorsements, I should mention that Chad plays Yamaha drums, Zildjian cymbals, and Remo heads with Vic First drumsticks. Of course, we always take a minute to appreciate your support of the Break It Down show. Thank you. Please let your friends in on it too. Pass that link around, reach back to us, John at breakitdownshow.com for me, Pete at breakitdownshow.com for old Pedro. And we both want to hear from you about music or policy or comedy or whatever else you think is interesting. We also like to support Save the Brave. They help veterans cope with PTSD, and you can read about them and lend your support, if you so choose, at savethebrave.org. We hope you do it by sending them a little bit of money, and if you're in Southern California, maybe spend a little bit of your time too. You also might see Pete rolling around in his Save the Brave truck. Again, savethebrave.org for more info, or email us and we'll put you in touch. Here comes our episode today with the great and powerful and oh so funky Chad Wright.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The
This
Offspring.
is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is Jon Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Chad Wright, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yes, you are. Now, there's another YouTube show, and it is called The Breakdown.
Yes.
And it is hosted by Chad Wright,
Yes.
where he breaks down iconic beats that he plays. Now, so far, you got one episode up.
Yep. There are, there's going to be two more to follow very soon.
Okay. So let's tell our audience about that one episode, though, because it's cold-blooded.
Sure. Let's see. So that one is the explanation of the Jacksons' Shake Your Body Down drum group.
Yeah. And that needs explaining.
Okay.
Just because that tom thing that you do, you know, everybody has their way of replicating that, but
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
you can play the way you play, or you can watch the guy who actually plays it with the Jacksons show you how to play it, and that may lend some insight into how you might be able to play it a little better. Everybody.
Yeah, it could. It's funny, man. So the history of that, I first learned about it, 20 years ago, at a clinic that Zorro did at the Hollywood Guitar Center. And Zorro broke it down pretty much the same way I broke it down in the video.
Yeah.
And
Love Zorro, by the way.
Oh man, dude, one of the best and one of the sweetest guys, man. And obviously, if anybody got his books from back then, he did his research like crazy phenomenal. And Ed Green, he explained how Ed Green actually laid the groove down, which is how I explained it in the first part of the video. It's 3-part overdub with the main drum groove, which is basically like Billie Jean. And then they did the hi-hat part, and then the tom part, which was number 3.
Slow down a second. So drummers out there who are tasked with playing Shake Your Body Down to the Ground, first of all, you are replicating Ed Green.
Yeah.
Let's start there. Second part is he did it in 3 parts. So you're replicating Ed Green times 3.
Right.
And, you know, so it's not an easy groove to play, and it's a groove that has subtleties and complications, and one that, you know, when you're in the live environment, you get to take a little bit of liberties because everybody's having a good time and it's live. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, although not too many liberties.
Right.
Otherwise, I get looks.
I bet looks you do not want.
No, from 4 of them.
That's only because one is busy working.
Yeah, right.
So okay, so then as you break it down, well, you know what? Everybody can go watch it, and they should. And
sure.
So you have 2 episodes to follow. What are the 2 episodes coming up?
So we got a unique thing that I participated in with Jay Gore, phenomenal guitar player, my wife, Noriko Oling, phenomenal keyboard player, Gussie Miller, phenomenal singer, and the legendary Lee Sklar. Everybody knows Lee.
Everybody knows Lee Sklar.
Yes. And we actually got all the video today. And this is the mix that's behind me that I'm going to finish. And then we're going to edit it. But we have done our rendition of Easy Lover.
Okay.
By Philip Bailey and Phil Collins.
All right. And so Philip Bailey and Phil Collins. Now, Phil Collins, Lee Sklar plays with Phil Collins all the time.
Exactly.
Who played bass on the record?
On the record, it is Nathan East.
Okay.
And Nathan is also the composer of that song.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
And alum of our show. We love Nathan East on this show. So anyway, okay. So you guys do Easy Lover. And then as far as the arrangement goes, first of all, how did you execute it? Were you guys able to come together? I mean, you and Noriko are in the same place, naturally.
Obviously. Yeah. Well, we're in the midst of this COVID-19 quarantine, as you know. So we all did it the way everybody's been doing it for the last 3 months, man.
Kind of like what we're doing right now.
Exactly. Here's a skeleton track, and I think what I did was I laid down my drums first to the actual record, and I actually put the record on grid so that it wouldn't waver.
I see.
And then I played on that. We did old school, man, and then I sent that to everybody else. I sent it to Lee. I sent it to Gussie. I sent it to Jay, and everybody kind of did their thing on top of that. And then I wound up sitting with Noriko tracking her stuff, and we sent drums, keyboards combo to everyone else. And they did their overdubs, and then they sent their stems back.
Okay. Sounds great. How much? So it sounds like if you played to the original track to lay it down and then built on that, you kept the arrangement the same.
We pretty much kept the arrangement exactly the same, except because I'm a huge Phil Collins fan, I just put their live ending at the end. And I figured, well, Lee knows that. So it was really simple. And it wasn't anything crazy. It was their basic live ending. So.
Quick sidebar. When you say you're a huge Phil Collins fan, are you more a fan of his singing, or are you more a fan of his drumming, or are you more a fan of his songwriting? There's a lot to unpack there when you're at Phil Collins.
There is. Both. But if I have to rank it, drums, songwriting, producer, actually drum, songwriting, producer, those go hand in hand, songwriting, producing. Okay. And then his singing. Yeah.
Well, what do you like about Phil Collins' drumming?
The way he hits the drums is just killing. It's always, it's the first thing that I ever noticed. First time I heard a Genesis record.
He's real slappy.
9 to 10. Yeah. And he's got a groove, man. He's got that British thing too, but his groove, you could just tell that he's influenced by a lot of R&B type of things from the 60s. Almost like Bonham was the same way. A lot of people don't know that, but I call it the English thing because a lot of English rock drummers have this thing.
Well, I think there was a lot of influence that you can see that's evident in his also producing and songwriting. You know, his choices are very influenced by 60s R&B. I was mad at Phil Collins, man, for a while because the Live Aid Led Zeppelin reunion.
Yeah,
he would be busy being Mr. Live Aid and flying from London
from
to
London
Philly.
to New York. I mean, to Philly, yeah.
And he overshadowed what was going to be, I thought, like the rock and roll redemption of my favorite drummer, Tony Thompson.
Yeah.
I love Tony Thompson, man.
I'm a huge Tony Thompson fan as well. So I would imagine you felt the same way I felt in seeing that as it was happening on that day. Yeah. And me definitely walking away with a little. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I stuck my bottom lip out for a little while. But, he is Phil Collins. And as far as like, you could be mad at him for a second, but he is an ambassador of the art form, and he's one of the drummers who stepped out front and, definitely speaks well for drummers and drumming. So can't be mad at him for too long.
No, I wasn't. I got over it.
Yeah, real fast. And let's face it, did a great job. Sounded good.
Yeah, he did, and both of them did, man. And that was, that's one of those gigs where it's such a monumental task to go in and play behind John Bonham and execute that music. And it was great because I read some Martin Drummer articles. One not too long after that from Tony Thompson, and he spoke on that. Phil Collins probably spoke on it a little bit later, if I can vaguely remember. But there were some things that they had both discovered in the Zeppelin music. You think it's one thing, and it turns out to be something completely different.
Yeah, so much more complex.
Yeah.
I love Tony Thompson, man. He played on so many songs that when they come on, I give my wife a look, and then she looks back at me and she goes, "That must be Tony Thompson." Because he's the one I always like to point out, man. I just love his playing so much. Your playing, however, let's talk about that and rewind a little bit because I want to get our listeners up to speed on kind of your path because you have a pretty interesting path. You grew up in Georgia.
Yep.
Right? How old were you when you started playing?
I was 4.
4?
When I really got the itch.
Okay. And you have a brother.
I do. I have a twin brother.
Yeah. Does he play too? Anything? He plays guitar. Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up in a musical house? Or you made it a musical house?
Guess we made it a musical house, man. That's interesting. My mom and dad played instruments growing up, but they weren't musicians. My mom played piano a little because my grandmother forced her to. And my dad played trombone in high school and college, but he was a huge music collector, not just jazz. Okay. So there was that thing. And then my grandmother had an antique piano that she forced into my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
That was my mom's mom. So we had this piano, and that was the first instrument that we played on, which was around 4. But I really wanted to play drums from the set. So there it is.
What were you listening to that made you want to play the drums?
My dad's collection. Well, I mean, I listened to everything that was on the radio back then. Okay. And AM back then was still the thing.
How old are you, Chad?
I'm 49.
49?
Yeah.
Man. He looks 27, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, man, I'm trying to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Knocking on everything.
You're doing all right so far. So what was in your dad's collection that you were listening to?
Man, he had everything he was a huge jazz collector. So like anything from Clifford Brown or Art Blakey, obviously Miles, Coltrane, you name it, he had it. And as far as span as even classical. So he listened to a lot of classical and he listened to a lot of rock. I mean, he had Black Sabbath in his collection, Tchaikovsky, the Doobies.
All over the place.
Everything.
What did you like at age 4? Well, okay, maybe age 4, but how old were you when you figured out how to work the record player to where you could choose? Okay, so at around age 5, I have the same experience. And I'll tell you what my experience was. My dad had a pretty diverse collection as well, but there were 2 records that I gravitated towards, and you might figure out what their commonality is. Those 2 records were The World is a Ghetto.
Okay. Yep.
and Bump City. And the thing that those two things had in common that made a 5-year-old want to hear them all the time was cartoon artwork on the album cover.
Yes. Yes.
And so I didn't really think about that, but it undoubtedly made me reach and grab it. And then, of course, I got hooked on those records and had no idea how it took me years and years to discover the complexity in those records, but those were the ones I grabbed. So that kind of set, I think, a tone for me. What were you grabbing when you were 5 years old?
Okay, that's interesting. So when I was 4, my dad he was a huge War fan, and me and baby brother, he loved that song.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, my brother and I don't know if it was a twin thing and we connected with the record from that, but that was like our theme.
Okay.
So
which one of you is older?
He is.
He is. So he got to sing Me and Baby Brother. Yeah.
Right. And so there was that record and the groove there. But then my dad came home when I was 5 with this album, like 2 albums from his band called Stuff.
Okay. Stuff.
And yeah. And that band had 2 drummers. Chris Parker and Steve Gadd.
Wow.
And I remember hearing it for the first
time. That band had 2 monsters.
Exactly. And that's how I learned how to read was when I was 4 or 5. I just wanted to know who was playing drums on those records, man. And it was Steve Gadd's drum solo in front of their rendition of Love the One You're With.
Oh, boy.
And I just said, man, I want to do that for the rest of my life. That's it.
That's it.
And that was it, man. That was.
Have you met Steve Gadd since? Have you told him this story?
No, man. I was such a fan. Obviously, he and I signed at Yamaha, and we did a whole autograph signing thing at NAMM one year, and he happened to be there. And man, I couldn't even form 3 words.
Man.
But I expressed how big of an influence he has been on me and all that great stuff. But I couldn't even begin to tell that whole story because it was like, sorry, man, I'm about to freak out right now. And you might not dig it.
Okay. All right. Well, this show has given me an excuse to sit in front of a lot of drummers that I love. One of them is Harold Brown. Do you know Harold Brown?
I don't know Harold.
Okay. He's the drummer from War.
Yes.
I love Harold Brown very, very much. He is the mayor of Long Beach as far as I am concerned. And I would say that if you ever get any opportunity to spend any time with Harold Brown, never mind drumming or whatever, just if you get a chance to spend time with him, he's just such a beautiful human being. And this is what I love about the fraternity of drummers and why I'm not afraid that this show often becomes, the Break It Down show is about practically everything that either Pete or myself find interesting. So sometimes we think, man, do we really want to go down a rabbit hole where I'm just like bullshitting with my favorite drummers? And the answer to that question is yes, because this fraternity is so pure and so beautiful. And when I met Harold was a long, long time ago, and I became friends with his son, Daryl, and we, so I've loved that Brown family for a long time, but whenever we get to spend time together, it's just the spending of time, just like some musicians are great to make music with, but all musicians are really great to hang with.
Yeah, man. It's all about the hang.
Yeah. So the reason I bring this up is because I have yet to meet Steve Gadd. I met Steve Gadd at a NAMM show many years ago, just very briefly. So I'm not even counting that. But I did meet one of my other very dear heroes, Rick Marotta.
Yeah, oh man.
He's been on the show a couple of times that we've hung out, and the stories he tells about Steve Gadd are pretty funny. But when we had him on the first time, about 5 minutes into the show, I referenced something that I love that he played, a song on a James Taylor album called Daddy Loves His Work. The song was called Hour That the Morning Comes. And it's a fantastic song, and he plays brilliantly on it. But when I said, one of my favorite pieces that you've done is Hour in the Morning Comes, he stopped and looked at me and said, now, where in the hell did you hear that? Because about 37 people bought that record. and it was, fun to get that reaction. So I think when you get to talk to Steve and you bring that up, he's probably going to say, stuff. I haven't even heard that. Nobody's even talked about that in 30 years.
Yeah.
So you might get that reaction out of him.
I hope so, man. Because obviously I know a lot of guys aren't really hip to stuff, or I should say in the younger generation. I don't know. But I've gone on tour, with multiple acts, and we've had, drummers from the different acts that are on this tour, and we'll all do a thing like, hey man, you give me a record of your favorite drummer or performance, and I'll give you a record. And mine is always stuff.
Yeah.
It's always the best of stuff. Yeah. And everybody's reaction is the same as mine, which is like, oh my God, I didn't know this even existed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to go do some homework when we're done here, as I'm sure as everybody else is. Go check out stuff, everyone. Yeah. Gad has played on so many zillion records, and so many of them are so good. And, I love the guys that have played on records, that many records and all those huge records, guys like J.R. Robinson. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're going to touch on J.R. Robinson because you've played a lot of J.R. Robinson gigs.
Yes, I have.
How did that come? Well, okay, I jumped forward quite a bit because we went from your being 5 years old and discovering records that your dad was listening to on through. Let's keep going. When did you begin to get, more and more serious about the drums? You knew you wanted to do it, but when did you really say, when were you able to sort of announce your identity as a drummer?
That's a good question. My identity as a drummer, I would say when I got comfortable, maybe when I was in middle school, of just like, it's no question about it. This is what I do.
Okay.
And being comfortable behind the kit and going out with my band and playing gigs and stuff. So maybe like around 11, 12.
What kind of gigs were you playing at 11, 12?
Typical gigs you could play in Atlanta at that age. We played a lot of talent shows, and we played like mall gigs. We did a local video show TV appearance, which was really cool. Fun. We did stuff like that. Yeah.
Mall gigs.
Yeah. When they with club gigs. But
okay. So when you are in middle school and there's attention on you and you're at the mall or playing places like that, is that feeding your middle school age ego, or is that feeding your artistic sensibility as a drummer?
I think it was artistic sensibility more than anything. I never really had an ego.
Okay. Yeah, you don't strike me as a guy who's been swimming in ego.
No, man. I was fortunate enough to come up with some guys like Sonny Emery is a big influence of mine because he was local boy done good.
Yeah.
And I played my first middle school, R&B pop band. Sonny's brother was the sax player in it. So that's how I met Sonny. And Sonny never had an ego. And he was major by that time. He was just getting the Crusaders gig and was going into that world. So I figured if he doesn't have an ego and he's badass,
yeah,
what's the point of being
really there's really no place for one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're growing up in the, with the example of Sonny Emery around, that's a pretty darn good example. How much older than us is? I'm only a year older than you. How much older than us is Sonny Emery?
He would have
probably
to be
8 or 9 years older than us, right?
Yeah. He would have to be somewhere in that area. Probably not quite 60, but
yeah. So okay, now you're in middle school. You're playing more and more. Were you in bands with your brother?
Yeah, he was in that band.
Okay, yeah, because what a great shtick.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's funny. Or
did anybody even notice?
No one. I don't think anyone even paid attention.
Yeah. Okay.
To my knowledge.
Yeah. All right. So keep moving forward. You're playing in high school. I'm sure you're getting music education in school. Yeah. How was the music education in Georgia? Were you in Atlanta proper?
Yeah, well, we lived in the suburbs,
Okay.
so the area that I grew up in middle school and high school, it was at that time called unincorporated Fulton County. So there was really nothing there. A lot of houses, nice houses, but very spread apart. And as far as like a grocery store or anything like that, nothing major. It's way more developed now. It's a different place where of my mom and dad's neighborhood than it was then. Yeah, it was suburbs, man. But Georgia in general, and Atlanta particularly, the music education in those schools were phenomenal. I mean, it didn't matter if it was city or if it was county, all the surrounding counties of Atlanta. Great music programs.
Yeah, and competitive.
Very competitive.
That's terrific. So much so that you found your way to Berklee.
Yeah, eventually.
I mean, and that's not an easy place to find yourself.
No,
So,
it isn't.
especially if you have the challenge of a music education in your school that's not great.
Yeah.
So
Right.
when you chose to go to Berklee, did you go there right out of high school, or did you have a path that involved other things?
No, I was trying to, and my dad didn't want to spend that kind of money. And so I went to another school on the Georgia-Florida border. Now
Okay.
it's Valdosta State University. And they had a great music program and a phenomenal jazz band, big band there. So I was there for a year and a half, but at the beginning of my second semester at Valdosta, I was like, I'm going to Berklee. And I submitted my my audition tape and application and got accepted. So I did my first semester of my sophomore year at Valdosta, and then went to Berklee in '91.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your dad didn't want to spend that kind of money for you right out of high school, but he saw pretty fast that you were serious.
Yeah, both my folks did. I mean, once we got to Valdosta and we did the stuff that we did down there, he could see, both of them could see that, there's potential in this.
Aha. Well, so what about your brother? What did he do?
So he played guitar all throughout, and we went to school together. So we went to Valdosta together, and then we transferred to Berklee together.
You both
and he
transferred
was,
to Berklee together. Okay.
yeah. So it was double the tuition, but he was,
Yeah, that's painful. Boy,
he did a lot, man, no
give it
kidding.
to their parents. They both go to a private school together.
At the same time. That's right. So he was doing the guitar thing and great, but he was always a great songwriter and producer. I mean, we both were. I have my accolades of production creativities, if I may, but he's always been like Mr. Nile Rodgers.
Up for that. Okay.
Yeah. And so when we went to Berklee, his sights were definitely on a studio environment.
Okay. That's
Concentrate.
great. Where is he now? Did he also end up in Los Angeles, or what's he doing?
Eventually, we stayed in Boston for a bit, and we were in a rock band and blah blah blah, and then he moved to New York.
Oh, okay.
In late 90s, late 90s,
Okay.
and produced and engineered out of New York for a while, and then eventually moved to LA.
All
I
right.
got talked into it.
That's terrific, and you get to be close together and stuff.
Yeah.
Good. Enough about him. Maybe we'll get a show with him later on down the road. But this show's about you. This show's about Chad. So then, your education at Berklee, how valuable? Worth the tuition?
And then some.
Okay.
I'll start from a drummer point of view. When I was there, the drummers that were alongside me,
Mm-hmm.
that I could call friends and just witness them, Abel Boreal Jr., yeah, Lil John Roberts,
Okay.
John Blackwell, John Lampkin, all the Johns.
Yeah.
Fausto Cuevas, who is a percussionist now, but when we were at Berklee, Fausto was a drummer.
Trap drummer. Okay.
Johnny Rabb, Nathaniel Morton.
Man.
I mean, I'm just scratching the surface. Chris
Yeah.
Luke. I'm literally scratching the surface here. Steve Haas.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
I'm literally scratching the surface here. Steve Haas.
This is the environment you're in.
Yeah. Antonio Sanchez. We were all there at the same time. And I couldn't have asked for a better group of guys to witness and learn from, because who else can you say? All those guys have done pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, right. But I point that out because that music environment produces a caliber of musician, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you're talking about your generation, but it doesn't matter what generation.
No, it doesn't, man. It doesn't matter, and that's what's great about that school, and more so than the books and the education of it. I point out a lot. It's the networking thing, and it's the camaraderie, the fraternity, sorority, depending on which way you look at it, of that thing, of that school,
Yeah. Okay, so you played around Boston for a while before you decided to move to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
How many years?
Gee whiz, man. So I went there in 91, finished Berklee basically in 94, 95, and I was there until spring of 2000.
Yeah. Did you actually finish? You graduated?
No, I have
nobody graduates, man.
That's not true, man. That's not true. Abe graduated. I think Nate graduated. Taku Hirano graduated. So, people graduate.
It's a long list of people though who go there and in their junior year or something, they're so busy and they just go, "Hey, man, I'm going to do it. I've got to, I got a call or whatever." It's the place where people get drafted into the pros too.
Sure, that's exactly what it is.
Somebody not to graduate. It's just one of those things where it's like, I meant to graduate, but then suddenly I had to go on tour.
Exactly, this thing came up. Yeah.
So for you, you worked in Boston for a while, and then to L.A. And tell us about your emergence in Los Angeles, because it's something that everybody wants to do. I mean, let's face it. When you are, let's say, it's the entertainment capital. So, and of course, New York, not to not acknowledge others, but Los Angeles is where if you are, let's say, a little girl growing up in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and you are the cutest thing that anybody has seen in 3 generations, you get told one thing all your life: you need to move to Los Angeles. Yeah.
That's right.
And the same is true for music. I mean, it's where entertainment happens. So everybody dreams about going to Los Angeles. You finally get here, and what everybody finds when they get here is, man, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of competition.
Yeah. It was really simple, man. Obviously, I had a lot of friends out here, and I reached out to them immediately, and a lot of guys, just about everybody, said, call this guy, call this guy, call this person. And I just did the networking thing, and I hit the ground running. What I did, because I told a lot of guys, you can't just rely on the phone numbers and call and then expect something to happen. You got to hit the pavement, because what I found was everybody else who came out here, even those who are from here, they hit the pavement, they hit the ground running, and they took the networking opportunity and they built upon that. And that's what I did. I mean, it took, I gave myself 3 years. It took me about 1.5 years. But as far as gigging went, I had a gig maybe 3 months, 2 or 3 months after I moved to LA.
Wow.
Just, a gig. I mean, like a cover band gig. I got my first tour. I moved here in April. I got the first tour in June.
Come on.
Yeah.
So how was the first tour? Who was it with? Where'd you go?
First tour didn't happen. We rehearsed for months. It was with an artist, brilliant artist named Maggie Louie.
Okay.
And Maggie had come out of the Colonel Bruce Hampton camp. And she had, she was putting this tour together. There were these guys, her husband at the time, and had Hollywood Pictures had money behind her. They were doing a documentary on her life.
Wow.
And she was touring to support that. And it was great, man. We rehearsed for like 3 months, and then she got sick and we had to cancel the tour. It was a great experience. And what's interesting is
you had to earn a little money.
Yeah, I earned a little money, but we signed contracts at the beginning of rehearsals, and her management set up a thing where if the tour was to get canceled, we would get paid in full for the tour.
Oh.
And man, I mean, sure enough,
that's a godsend right there.
Yeah, those checks came like we were on tour, and it was definitely a godsend. And what I found out very quickly afterwards was that was a very rare thing, and I'm thinking it was commonplace. And yeah, so
wow, yeah, so lucky stroke as soon as you got here.
Yeah,
so that was 3 months in. And then you did it for a few months, and then now fast forward to the next big break.
Next big break would be.
I guess you don't have to really fast forward. You just have to keep going.
Yeah. The next big break would, because there were a couple of other opportunities and I had to turn them down. But the first break was I did a gig and rehearsed with Nadir Shakur of Arrested Development.
Oh, yeah.
With bass player Robin Roundtree. And through Robin, I met my now wife, Noriko, and I didn't know.
Robin?
Yeah, right. And Noriko and Robin had just come home from doing Pink's whole thing. They were in Pink's first band.
Wow.
And Pink was huge at that. I mean, it was her first album, man.
It was immediately huge.
Yeah, gangbusters.
Understood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I met Noriko.
Such a
Noriko
good record.
introduced me. Great record, man.
It had to be a lot of fun to tour that record.
I'm sure it was, man. I mean, I've seen the video footage of the shows, and the band was killing. So and the music just lent it for it, you know. So Noriko introduced me to Daryl Crooks, legendary guitar player here.
Yeah. Introduced
me to Ollie Woodson of The Temptations, legendary. And so I did a gig. Noriko put me on a gig for Ollie Woodson, and she put Melvin Davis on bass.
Man.
For this show.
Yeah.
And from that show, Melvin offered the Shaka Khan gig to me.
Oh, man. Melvin is great.
He's the best, man. I mean, that guy.
So good.
I love Melvin.
Such a beautiful dude, too.
He is.
I saw him last year with Shaka Khan.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it's nothing. Yeah, he killed, of course. But I don't know if this happened on the tour that you did with him, but there was a spot where everybody left and everybody in the band, everybody gets to show off for a second. Mm-hmm. But Melvin got a full, several minutes where everybody left the stage and left Melvin alone, and he just had everybody mesmerized.
Yeah.
So, what a great player. That has always been there? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just that kind of player.
He's just that kind of player, man.
Yeah.
Can play anything.
Yeah. And so there you are playing with Melvin and playing behind Shaka. And what year was that?
That was 2000. That was the end of 2001.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's see. 2001. For a minute, Shaka had Michael Bland.
Correct.
Right before you?
So I came in after Mike.
Okay. All right.
So talk about big shoes.
Yeah, no kidding. I just missed you because I saw her on that tour with Michael Bland. She came through actually my hometown, Vallejo, California.
Okay.
And played not only in the Bay Area, she played in Vallejo. So that was cool. It was good to see. And she was, of course, sounded great. You came in the tour after that. You spent how long with her?
I was with Shaka. Not really long at all, man. That was December of 2001 to October of 2002.
Wow. Why?
Sure.
What's wrong with you? Did you quit? I've had enough of this, Melvin. I gotta go.
I did not quit. I was let go. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was cool. Franklin Vanderbilt came in right after me.
Okay.
I was, as long as I fulfilled my obligation, I was cool with it. I mean, artist wants to change and artist wants to change. And there was a lot of changing at that point because Melvin had left as well. So, but as a result, because I was available, I got 2 major gigs after that. I got Monica immediately. Actually, I got called for Monica while I was out on tour with Chuck.
Wow.
And I was able to put Monica in. And that
had to be a fun gig too.
It was a great gig, man. We just did TV promo stuff with Monica, but the band was phenomenal. And at the same time, Melvin recommended me to Lee Ritenour.
Oh, so, come on. Thanks, Melvin.
Yeah, man. I mean, Melvin is a very huge
human being, for one.
Being in my yeah. I mean, he plays a huge part in my career and the advancement of it. And I'm so grateful to this day for him just entrusting
that is terrific.
Would, be able to do a good job.
Bestowed upon us, man. That guy is so good. We have yet to have him on the show. We had him on briefly. We did a quick interview for him because we were doing a spot from the Tech Awards on Larry Batiste and Claytoven Richardson, and he was in that band. He was in the Tech Awards band. So we talked to him for a second because I was like, I got to talk to Melvin Davis. Can I talk to Melvin Davis? So we did that, and then we said, hey, man, come do a show with us. And he said, I will, as soon as I get home. And you know what it's like trying to get him home. But we'll get him. We're coming for you, Melvin.
Yeah, man. Get him.
Yeah, he's really good. We're not even to the Jacksons yet.
No, we're far from the Jacksons.
Oh, man. We're far from the Jacksons, and we're 47 minutes into a 60-minute show. So let's keep going. We might have to make this a 2-parter.
We could. I could jump. I mean, let me see. How did I – okay. Let's jump to the Jacksons quickly. So I met at the time that I was doing Chaka, I met Rex Salas.
Okay. We're going to talk about him in a second.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And from Rex, from that meeting, I was in the back of his mind for whatever.
How did you plan with Chaka? How did that happen?
I didn't actually. So I was home from a break.
Okay.
Doing a gig at BB King's when it was BB King's and Universal with Rico and Daryl Crooks. And Daryl and Rex are very good friends as well. And Daryl had Rex come down to this show. Okay. And that's how I met Rex for the first time. And it was just hey, I know you, and I can't believe I'm meeting you. And, dude, you're killing. And the Velvet Rope tour was just, you did such an amazing job. Congratulations. And he was doing so much other stuff by then.
So much other stuff.
Yeah. So after meeting him, I went on and I wound up, long story short, doing High School Musical concert tour and then doing Corbin Blues solo tours. And so for the second solo tour, Corbin hired Rex to be the musical director. And so that's how I started to really work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Rex and I started working closely from that point on.
I've never met Rex, but we have a bit of a connection because I went to a friend of mine, took me to the Rhythm Nation show when it was here in Sacramento, and we went to go see it. And then in the middle of that, she's Janet's handing the band a little bit, and she says, and here's the funkiest Guamanian Rex Solis, who at the time her MD was Chucky Booker.
That's right.
But he was in the band, and he ripped. And of course, I'm like, I thought I was the funkiest Guamanian. So, but he tore it up. And then this is one of the things that happens, man. Guam is a really small place, and there's a lot of musicians from Guam. And the thing about being from such a small place is that we were all there for a long time. Like our families were there for very long. It was isolated. Our parents' generation is really the generation that started to leave. And so if I meet somebody who's our age, who's from Guam, we don't know each other, but often our parents do know each other.
Sure.
So I went home that night and was like, man, I just saw the funkiest Guamanian. What just happened to me? And the next day I call my parents and I tell them this story and I go, yeah, and his name was Rex Solis. And my mom goes, oh, that's Mary's boy. And so, of course, our mothers know each other. But anyway, another story. But I really would like to get Rex on this show.
Yeah, man. We can get him.
Just so that my mom can see him. And he's, you want to talk about how Sonny Emery was local boy done good. We Guamanians, we claim all the Guamanians who do everything. We get excited about anybody doing anything, man. And he has reached the top. So I'm glad he was instrumental in that part of your career. So he brought you in, and now we fast forwarded to the Jacksons.
Yeah. So I was on tour with Michael Bolton as his musical director, and I was home for a little break, and Rex called me asking about what I thought about this drummer, Charles Streeter. I said, man, Streeter is one of the most phenomenal drummers walking the planet. That dude is killing. He's got chops, but he plays also like he's like 40 years old because his groove is just stupid. So he's like, oh man, well, that's who we got to do this Jacksons thing. Cause this was in 2011. This was like fall 2011. I was like, well, you're not gonna be mad. He's like, oh man, this thing isn't until December, but we were gonna start rehearsing, whatever. I was like, oh man, well, I'm off from Michael's tour in those weeks in that month of December. He's like, oh man, I wish you had told me that. I wish I'd known that. I would have just asked you to do the gig. Hey man, it's all good. You're gonna be happy with Streeter. And sure enough, man, Streeter just killed the gig. He was just, he's Charles Streeter. So flashback, I'm out on tour with Michael Bolton again, and I'm in Australia, Sydney to be exact, and I see Streeter posts, I'm paraphrasing loosely, God is good, going out on the J-Lo tour. So I go,
vacancy.
Exactly. So I go, I wonder who they're going to get to do this Jacksons tour, because the Jacksons had announced it and they were starting to put the show together.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting down in my hotel room and I get an email from Stacy Lamont Sidner, who's my counterpart, great drummer. And he says, hey man, can you put in a good word to Rex for me? It's like, sure. So as I'm about to send an email, my wife calls my phone, my cell phone.
Okay.
And she says, Rex is trying to get in touch with you.
Okay.
And
like, Stacey, okay. I'm about to hit the send button, but my phone rang.
I know what this is about. So I immediately call Rex, and Rex says, I don't know if you heard. And it's like, yeah, I know. He's like, where are you? I'm in Sydney. I got one more week of this Michael Bolton leg. And then we have like 3 weeks off, and then we start this next leg of the tour. So he goes, oh my God, man, what is it going to take for you to get off the Bolton tour and come to this Jacksons tour? I said, well, hang on a second, man. I gotta, Stacy wants to do the gig, man. And I think he would be great for it. And he says, yeah, I know, but Stacy plays percussion with Jermaine, and Jermaine wants Stacy to play percussion. And so I
you still got to really put in the good work for him. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. Definitely.
You know what? Said, right, I want to pause for just a moment, and I want to highlight the karmic implications of the story you just told. because number one, you have made a habit throughout your life and career of celebrating these other players and what you love about them. And it came back to you because in the midst of celebrating Stacey and what he was going to contribute and how he was going to do a great job, you know, I think one of the things that happens is when that kind of selflessness is on display, it really just makes guys want to play with you more, because that means that you're going to be a collaborator.
Hey, I tell you, here's a true story. Yes. When I auditioned for the Michael Bolton tour, Charles Streeter was the other drummer. It was a bunch of drummers, man. It was 3 days of the most intense auditioning I've ever gone through. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, Charles and I were the last guy standing. And I had an advantage, a big advantage over Charles, because I had already subbed on the gig twice for Land Richards. Okay. So I knew Michael's book. I knew everything. I had all the charts. And so even in those auditions, I made sure that the playing field was leveled for all of us. So I brought in my E-pad that had all the samples for all the songs, and I showed guys where the sounds were for each song. I had the charts, so I brought the charts in so the guys could read them, because it was like, I'm not going to take this as we're all in this together, man. If I get the gig, great. If I don't get the gig, great. But we're all going to be on a level playing field. So when it was Charles and I, at the end, before Michael came in, and we were playing When a Man Loves a Woman, at the big Porcaro drum break, Streeter did something else, which was fantastic. What he played was phenomenal. But I stopped and I said, hey, yo, Charles, if you play the drum fill that Porcaro played on the record, I guarantee you'll get the gig. So he says, okay, well, what is it? So I, showed him what it was, and it was like, there it is. Wow. He played it before Michael came in. It was great. And then when Michael came in, he decided to play something else. But
all right, Charles.
But my point to him was, I'm not gonna take this as having the unfair advantage.
Yeah.
You deserve this gig just as much as I deserve this gig. So let's keep the playing field level.
That is an amazing amount of selflessness and confidence. Hey, man, I'll tell you this, because I want to say these words before we're done with this show. I met you at NAMM just this year, last January. Yeah. And I think we found, first of all, Corey Jacobs introduced us.
Yes.
Corey Jacobs is one of my dearest, oldest friends, man. We grew up together. And whatever I learned how to play on the drums early on, I probably learned from Corey, because before he was a keyboard player, he was a drummer, and still, I'm sure, a fantastic drummer. But he introduced us, and any endorsement from Corey is enough for me. So you and I ended up just standing there chopping it up for probably about 45 minutes.
Yeah, and trying to get Rex. Rex had just got there. When I was leaving, I was trying to put you guys together, and
yes, and I appreciate that. It'll happen at some point. But the point I want to make was that, let's say not to speak in superlatives, but you were the nicest person I met at NAMM. I walked away from that experience going, man, Chad Wright is the nicest dude I've met all week. Sorry, other people I met at NAMM. If you thought you were the nicest person, I met a lot of nice people at NAMM, of course. That happens every year.
It can happen.
Yeah, but we had a great time, and it's a testament to your approach to this thing, and all the success that you found is, couldn't happen to a nicer dude, man.
Thank you, man. Well, likewise, man. I got to tell you, I left with a smile on my face having met you, man. I had to tell my wife immediately after I split, like, man, I just met this cat. Jon Leon's killing. He's so sweet, and I was trying to make a connection and with you and Rex, and I was so disappointed because I had to split. If I didn't have to split, you guys would have been in the same room together.
Yeah, we'll do it at some point. Now, before we go, though, I want to ask you, looking forward, when do you think there will be gigs again, man? When do you think we're going to start enjoying live music? What's your outlook?
I know my outlook is Optimistic. So I'll just say that I've already been in touch with 2 management companies and 3 artists, and they've already got the stuff on the calendar that's going to happen. So far, nothing has been changed from that. So, and that's going to happen, I would say, in September.
Okay.
And that, I would say, that's when it's going to happen. Now we don't know what's going to happen from now till then, but things are on the books. Spaghettini opened up and they did their first show that my wife played a week or 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So a week and a half ago. So, people and venues are trying to accommodate this whole thing. There was, 6-foot rule and all that stuff in place. So
did you see the 846 thing that Chappelle did?
I did.
That was, aside from the power of Chappelle and how poignant his message was there, I enjoyed watching how they executed that show.
I did too, and I thought it was a fantastic model for what other venues could do. And I know there's an economic side of everything, and how are we going to make our money back if we can only fill X amount of seats? Blah 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 blah. But I also believe, thanks to Dave Chappelle, here again, a groundbreaker, that there's a way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Human beings, we need to gather. We need music in our lives. We need a live music experience.
Yeah,
we're going to figure out a way to do it and to consume it and to make it happen in a way that that enriches us. Hey, man, this has been great, and I feel like we just got started.
Hey man, you're great. You do your homework too. I don't want to say I'm blown away because I expected that, but then
So we can do this again.
Sure. Just say when. Where am I going right now?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to do it again, and we'll probably do it again sooner than later. Today, everybody, our guest has been Chad Wright. Catch him on the road at some point with somebody, because it seems like many artists, you are definitely an in-demand drummer, and your work ethic and your attitude and your approach as a collaborator says it all, and you're going to stay busy, and we're going to enjoy you whenever you come to town.
Yeah, man.
I also did I see Engelbert Humperdinck? Did you play with Engelbert Humperdinck?
For 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Wow.
Yeah, I was just a sub. Sub drummer, musical director.
We took my mom to see Engelbert Humperdinck, of course, under very much protest between me and my brother. My dad really took my mom to see Engelbert Humperdinck and dragged us along when we were kids. And he said, just recently, he said to me, "Do you remember when we saw Engelbert Humperdinck?" And I said, "Yes, I remember that being excruciating, and I did not enjoy myself." And he said, "You did enjoy yourself." And I remember looking at you, because I hadn't begun playing the drums at that point. And he said, "I remember looking at you and you were mesmerized by the drummer." And that's when I knew it would stick, because my dad was a sax player. But he said, okay, well, the boy's not going to play sax, but he sure is paying attention to what's going on behind the traps.
Yeah, man.
So it's great to hear that you occupied that gig. And, man, can't wait to have you on again. This has been great, man. This has been so much fun.
Man, thank you, John. Yeah, man, anytime. I've had a blast.
All right. Hey, everybody. Chad Wright. Here he is.